This is the pattern that I have seen time and time again after over 10 years in this industry and helping thousands upon thousands of women. And that topic is the single biggest factor to your success when it comes to weight loss in menopause. Check it out. So that's a big statement. The single biggest factor to success when it comes to your weight loss in menopause. And sometimes when I talk about this topic, I get a lot of guesses as to what it is, right? It's not eating carbs, it's intermittent fasting, it's doing more cardio. Or if you've listened to this podcast for a while, it's a healing stage, or listening to your coach, or one of my favorite sayings, time and consistency. And sorry to disappoint, the answer is none of those things. Now, before I tell you what the answer is, let me say this. If you are newer here, you will learn, if you like this episode enough to go binge and dive into others, that I am not someone who likes pump you up fluff. I always like to say nowhere in my bio does it say motivational speaker. I am as you heard me say in the intro, a very data-brained person. So I'm saying that because the answer to the single biggest measure of success on the surface can sound a little woo-woo, rainbows and glitter and unicorn. And as we dive deeper in this episode, you're going to see why this is the answer according to neuroscience, not according to pump you up fluff. So that was a big buildup. The number one factor to success when it comes to weight loss, specifically in menopause, is your inner monologue, meaning the way that you talk to yourself internally. Now, probably about 70% of people listening to this podcast or watching this video, depending where you're taking it in, just groaned and said, man, Rachel, I thought you were going to give me an actual key to success. Here's why this is an actual key to success. On this podcast, I talk a lot about something called the pleasure principle. Freud discovered something called the pleasure principle, which means as human beings, if you have a pulse and a heartbeat, this applies to us. We are designed, human nature, we are designed to avoid pain and seek pleasure, which means anytime we try to put ourselves in a state of prolonged pain, and let me go down a rabbit hole here for a second. Pain can be physical, right? If I'm recording this episode and I'm sitting on my keys and it's poking me in the rear end, you best believe I'm going to shift in my chair because that's physical pain. Pain is also emotional. Trying to live in a state of restriction, trying to put our horse blinders on and say, this is a good food, this is bad food, this is allowed, this is not allowed. That's also pain. That's also discomfort. And as human beings, we are designed, all of us, right? You might have more willpower than I do, but all of us are designed to avoid pain and seek pleasure. What does that have to do with the key to success? I have seen thousands upon thousands upon thousands of menopausal women heal their metabolisms and lose weight for almost a decade now. That is a long period of time. That is significant. Sometimes my brain has a hard time comprehending how I'm old enough for that statement to be true, but that's a story for another day. When we see women go through this program and they come in with the expectation of, I've been tracking my macros for a week, why aren't I releasing weight, right? The journey ain't going to be so pretty. There's some deep work to do there around mindset, around expectation management. And what I find 99.999% of that time is that the women who, I'm just going to call it come in hot, right? Come in with not so realistic expectations of how the process works, I'm hesitant to say the word demands, but I'm going to say the word demands here of, I want these results yesterday. How do we make this go faster? What are we doing wrong? Why aren't we seeing success? When you look under the hood, that's usually how they're talking to themselves, right? We are beating ourselves into the ground and thinking that that's going to get us better results, that that's going to make us work harder, that that's going to make us more disciplined. And I'm going to harp on that a lot more in a second. I'm going to interrupt this episode real quickly to ask a 30-second favor. If you are loving the podcast, if you can tap that 5-star review button above, maybe even leave a few nice words, it is the biggest help to getting the podcast out there. As the time I'm recording this, we don't advertise the podcast, so we rely on our old friend, the algorithm, to help get it in the hands of other women. Leaving a review is the absolute number one way to help us do that. Thank you in advance. Thank you. Now let's get back to the episode. The kind of other school of women, I'm going to call it for ease of conversations, are the ones that come in and from day one, they're like, listen, I know I didn't get in this situation overnight. I know from listening to this podcast and reading my book and whatever else research they've done, I know that my metabolism's not working so great right now. And I also know it's going to take some time to get out of that. So I know this is going to be a longer journey. What would help me is to know what to focus on, right? If weight loss is possible, it's biology, it's possible, but it's going to take some time. Where can I put my focus so that I know I'm checking the boxes and I know that I'm progressing? That is a woman who is going to see success, because humans are pleasure-seeking creatures, right? I'm gonna call them woman A and woman B for a second, which I hate categorizing, but we're gonna do it here. Woman A thinks that being hard on herself, beating herself up, beating her coach up, setting unrealistic expectations is going to make the process go faster. Let me ask you a question. I want to put yourself back in your school days, right? We all had those teachers who set the bar really high and made us feel really good about ourselves by celebrating our successes on the way, which led us to believe we can achieve that high bar, right? I hope you were fortunate enough to have some of those teachers, at least one. I would venture to guess, unfortunately, having worked in the education industry for a long time, I would guess we've also had those teachers who make us feel like garbage about ourselves, who yell, who berate us, who make us feel like mistakes are not allowed. Who did you perform better for? Right? As women especially, we have this false belief that being a jerk to ourselves, that beating ourselves into the ground is going to make us work harder. Human nature states otherwise, right? We think the thing that is making us successful is driving ourselves into the ground, when in reality, if we could learn, when we can learn, to be our best coach, we still set that bar high. We can still set that bar incredibly high. But we learn to be our best coach just like that teacher was. What you learn quickly is that beating yourself up was actually the thing holding you back. So I say all that to say, when woman, we're going to call her woman A, right? She's coming in hot, unrealistic expectations, beating up everyone around her, and she's beating up everyone around her because internally she's beating up herself, right? She is not going to stick with it long term. I can tell you this from experience. She's going to get a few weeks in, she's going to get frustrated, she's going to say the weight's not coming off, and she's going to quit. When in reality, this works for everyone because biology is going to biology. She's not going to stick with it, not because she's the unicorn that biology doesn't apply to, but because she is still a pleasure-seeking human creature who is designed to avoid pain and seek pleasure. And she's already someone living in a lot of pain because she's beating herself up constantly. So coming in with unrealistic expectations and focusing on all the stuff that's not working, that's a whole lot of pain, and nobody's sticking with that by design. Woman B, who comes in having done her research, understanding we didn't get in this situation overnight, we're not getting out of it overnight, asking the beautiful questions of what's a true measure of success, right? She's not throwing glitter on the situation. She's saying, look, I still need to be a pleasure-seeking creature. She's not saying in so many words, but I still need to see and feel success. I need to know that I'm walking the path. We all do. Who would stick with something if you're working so hard not seeing results? But her question is, what can I focus on to make sure that I'm walking the path so that I'm seeing results on the other side, knowing it's going to take some time? Now, we're going to take this one step further, because you're hearing me say that the biggest factor to success in weight loss is your inner monologue. The other part that comes into play of inner monologue is the power of curiosity. And that's something I talk a lot about on this podcast. Again, I'm going to stick with woman A and woman B. It's kind of wigging me out a little bit because I don't love categorizing people, but for ease of conversation. Woman A, the one coming in hot, unrealistic expectations, bashing everyone and everything around her, right? She gets her personal nutrition plan. She gets her macros. She plugs it into her app. She does it for a day. It's all over the place. Of course, it's all over the place. We've never thought about this before, right? One of the first things we tell our members, and we harp on this, is if the expectation is just because your coach gave you some goals, you're going to hit them, you are setting yourself up for disappointment. You're setting yourself up for failure. We've never thought about food this way. How in the world would we be good at it? If you've listened to this podcast before, I always love to tell this story. When I was a middle school music teacher, my kids every year, without doubt, like they would crack up over this, because the first day they got their instruments, these kids are in 6th grade, sometimes 4th. getting instruments for the first time. You can imagine what my classroom sounded like. So I would hand them their instruments. And before we did anything, I would tell them this. I go, guys, I got to tell you something. It is about to sound like complete chaos in this room. Like, it is about to sound like a room full of a zoo with dying animals. Like, I would go to the extreme with it. And there would be giggling, there would be hysterical laughing, and mostly there would be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she said that, right? Because you're a teacher. You're supposed to tell them how wonderful they were. But I would tell them, look, life is about expectation management. And in this scenario, how could we be good at this? We've never touched a trumpet before. In what world are we going to pick it up and are we going to sound like Maynard Ferguson, or insert your musician here? And I learned to do that because in my first couple years of teaching, I did not do that. And the first day with their instruments, which was supposed to be a big, exciting thing, ended with at least 3 kids in tears because they had a sound in their mind of what they would sound like, and that wasn't it. And side note, that was my experience with music. The first day in 4th grade I touched an instrument, I came home crying because I thought, this is what a trumpet sounds like. It did not sound like that. So the beauty of this is we turned it into a game. I would record them. Like I'd give them a little count off so that I could protect my ears. I let them go crazy for like 30 seconds and then we cut it off. And then 3 months later, when they were prepping for their first adorable little winter concert, we'd go back and listen to that first day. And they could not believe how far they had come in 2-3 months. Because that is the power of expectation management, and that is the power of curiosity, right? I know I'm not going to be good at this in the beginning. I wonder what would happen if, fast forward 2-3 months. So woman A, coming in hot, expectation that I plugged in my nutrition plan. I'm not hitting them. I can't do this. This is a mess. This is never going to work for me. And there we are. It is never, if that is the mindset, you are right. It is never going to work for you. Woman B comes in with a place of curiosity. What an interesting way to think about food. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, I've lived a whole life of eat this, don't eat this. This is good, this is bad, this is allowed, not allowed. It makes sense from a science standpoint that my body's designed to run on a balanced carbs, fat, protein. Never thought about what that was before. Certainly never thought about food as fitting in a budget. This is interesting. Day 1 we track. It's all over the place. I am not great at this. Interesting. Let me take a look at breakfast and see what I ate that went so awry. Interesting. I didn't know that each egg yolk has 5 grams of fat. Man, I ate 4 of them this morning. That was 20 grams of fat right off the bat. Who knew? It makes a lot of sense now why I was struggling with X, Y, and Z. I wonder if tomorrow I make some changes. Looks like egg whites have a lot of protein without the fat. I wonder what would happen if I took those 4 whole eggs, made them 2, filled in the rest with egg whites. You hear how she's already learning, right? No one is doubting that tomorrow's going to be better than today. She didn't call herself a jerk. She didn't tell her she's terrible about this. She stayed in the power of curiosity. I am telling you from the bottom of my soul, if I had an answer of like the women who are most successful, eat this food, don't eat that food, you know my logic brain, I'd share it with you. This is the deciding factor. The women who come in with unrealistic expectations, who wanted results yesterday, who I don't have time to learn a skill, just tell me what to eat. All the stuff that sounds good in theory but doesn't actually work, or we wouldn't be here, you're not going to stick with it. Because you might have more willpower than I do, but at the end of the day, humans are designed to be pleasure-seeking creatures. The women who come in knowing this is a journey, the good news is it's one and done. Once I have a healed metabolism, that's it for life. Once I master the skill, try to fall off a bike, right? If your brain's wired for the skill, it's hard to do. And like learning any new skill, it's going to take time, it's going to take practice, it's going to take consistency. And we'll take it one step further. The more I can step into a place of curiosity, the more I can practice a growth mindset. I have a whole podcast episode about growth mindset. The more I can be my own best coach instead of a raging jerk, the more I'm going to stick with it as a pleasure-seeking human being. The kinder I am to myself, the more curious I am, the longer I'm going to stick with it. And the longer I stick with it, I'm an intelligent woman. I'm going to keep learning. I'm going to keep tweaking. I'm going to keep adjusting. And that is how we master the skill. And that is how we have it for life.